It's another ugly loss for the Atlanta Braves. We have said that far too much this year. We'll take a trip around the league as well, looking at the trade deadline news and rumors that are happening, and then we'll set you up for what's become a big series in New York against the Mets. All that on today's episode of Locked On Braves, so let's get into it.
You are Locked On Braves, your daily Atlanta Braves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, and welcome back to Locked On Braves, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, where we cover your favorite Atlanta sports teams each and every day. I am your host, Jake Mastriani. You can follow me on social media at ShortstopBall. Also, make sure you check out the podcast there as well at LockedOn_Braves. Send in any questions, comments, or feedback that you have for the podcast. If you're new and watching on YouTube, please do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, hit that thumbs up button as well. It doesn't cost you anything, and it helps me out a ton here at Locked On Braves. Another way you can support the show, if you're listening on the audio version, leave me a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify, and you enjoy any of our great sponsors, make sure you use our promo codes. Those are several ways that you can help support us here at Locked On Braves, and thank you for all that support that you give me. Thank you for letting me know you're an everydayer. Several of you did on our last podcast. I really appreciate that. A lot of kind comments as well after a little bit of a rant that I went on to start yesterday's podcast. There's always that one negative voice that you let stick in your head, but thank you so much for all of you who commented to support me on yesterday's episode. I really do appreciate that a ton. Today's episode, we're going to get into another ugly loss. How many times have I had to say that this year? But we'll break it down. You're probably going to get a lot of more negativity. So if you're one of those who don't enjoy the negativity right now, first segment will not be for you. But just a lot of bad things happening on a Wednesday's game. We'll get into it, and then we'll take a trip around the league, and I'll tell you some of the latest news and rumors happening as we gear up for the trade deadline. And then we'll set you up for the Mets series, which has become a very important series right now for the Atlanta Braves. So all that coming your way on today's podcast. This episode of Locked On Braves is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your rivals. Check out Booking.com for your stay today. It was a 9-4 loss for the Atlanta Braves on a Wednesday as they somewhat get swept, I guess. It's the final game got rained out. They lost both of the games so far, so we'll see what happens with that makeup game on September 9th. But a 9-4 loss, and look, this was one of the ugliest games of the year, and there's been a lot of them. And I gave the guys over at Braves Today a little bit of grief for writing that this was the ugliest loss of the year, just because, again, I feel like there's been a ton of them that you could say that about. But when you consider the fact that they didn't pitch well, there's a couple of defensive mistakes in this game, especially in that first inning. And while the offense scored 4 runs, they had a ton of chances to get back in this game and do more and just couldn't do it. So every phase of the game was really bad in this one, which makes a very ugly loss for the Atlanta Braves. And this game was just doomed from the start. And look, I'm not trying to make excuses for the Atlanta Braves. I'm not. Again, if you heard my rant the other day, you know how frustrated I am with how this team is playing, and they certainly hurt themselves a lot, but they are getting absolutely no help this year either. And this game was just doomed from the first inning. The Reds scored 4 runs when Alan Winans should have been out of the inning twice. I believe Elly De La Cruz was out at second base. I can understand why you wouldn't want to challenge in the first inning of a game. You don't want to lose that challenge early on what was a close play, but the first look I saw on replay, I thought it was pretty clear that he was out, that glove got him. I thought live when I saw it, I thought he was out. And on the first replay I saw, I definitely thought he was out. And a lot of people want to blame Snitker for this. Snitker doesn't have a replay screen in front of him. He's taking the guys, whoever is looking at these in a booth somewhere and calling down to Weiss, he's taking what those guys are saying, and they're telling him whether or not to review it. So I don't put that on Snit and this Braves team this year and just their philosophy on challenging plays. It's got to be 100%. And again, it's first inning. It was a close play. I thought it was pretty clear, but you lose that challenge in the first inning, that's a big thing. And then with two outs after 2 runs have scored, you get what should have been a strike 3 call on a ball that was all in the box on your screen. And then, of course, the bat goes on and the guy hits a 2-run home run off the foul pole. It's just how many things can go against this Braves team. And look, even after those bad calls are made, you got to make pitches. You got to make plays. Again, I'm not trying to make excuses for the Atlanta Braves, but you have to admit when you're watching these games, there's just nothing going their way. I mean, they should have been out of the first inning with nothing given up, and instead you're down 4-0 right out of the gate. The game is over just like that. It's just nothing going their way, and they're not helping themselves either. Well, let's get into the offensive side of things first in this one. They scored 4 runs, which more often than not I will absolutely take, but not on a day where you're starting Alan Winans, and obviously not on a day where you're giving up 9 runs. But I look at the strikeout line. 14 strikeouts for this Braves offense against a group of Reds pitchers that shouldn't be that tough to hit against. And they had a lot of hits, but they struck out in some big spots. And I know this lineup is one of the worst in all of baseball right now. I mean, it is, I posted this on X. It is hysterically bad to look at the numbers for this offense. And you look at it right now, 248, 111. Give Nacho a little bit of a break. 306, that's the one positive. Marcell Ozuna, 223, 184, 184, 182, 212, 216, 129. Those are the batting averages for this Braves lineup right now. It may be the worst lineup in all of baseball, what they put out there on Wednesday. Look, you're missing Austin Riley. You're missing, Acuna, Ozzie, Michael Harris. You're missing some pretty big pieces. Not that those guys have been absolutely lighting the world on fire, although Riley's been much better lately. But still, you just look at what this lineup has right now. You have Adam Duvall and Eddie Rosario batting 5th and 6th in the lineup for you, which I don't know why Murphy's not hitting ahead of those guys. It's a very, very bad lineup. And still, I feel like they should be performing better than they are right now. Twice in this game, you had bases loaded with 1 out, and they didn't score a single run. Both times striking out in the 1 out scenario, but then still not even to get a hit with 2 outs. It's just very, very frustrating, especially with this offense. And again, it is a bad lineup. There are bad players in this lineup right now because of the circumstances. But you got to be able to put the bat on the ball. You got to be able to make something happen in some of those situations. They had plenty of base runners in this one, and they just couldn't get that big hit. And that's kind of the story of this season. I feel like there's been plenty of chances this year for the Braves to put some runs on the board and have some big innings, and they just can't get that big hit. Now, you want to look at some positives. I've been very negative. You want to look at some positives. Olsen picked up a couple of hits. Both were singles, but he had 4 hard hit balls, and he had no strikeouts. Now, the strikeouts, I believe he only has 3 strikeouts since the All-Star break in the 5 games. So that's a positive trend. And hopefully we're starting to see some of this hard contact get rewarded. Arcia's at-bats have looked much better as of late, and we're seeing him start to drive the ball the other way for hits. Murphy got on base 2 more times. He got on base 5 times in the 2 games that he played in this series, which was both games in this series. So those are all positive. I mean, if those guys start getting on base more, doing some things, obviously you need to see the power from Olsen. Ozuna keeps doing what he's been doing. You get Riley back in the lineup. I do start to feel much better about this offense. But man, 14 strikeouts against that Reds pitching, that's really, really bad for this offense. Alan Winans, look, he wasn't great, but again, in all fairness, his start was taken away from him in that first inning when you shouldn't have given up anything, and you go on to give up 4 runs. And not only that, you had to throw a ton of more pitches when you should have been out of the inning. So that start, look, he's not good. I'm not trying to defend that he needs to stay in the rotation, but that start really just got taken away from him in the very first inning with the way things played out. His slider and changeup, they're really good. He got 9 whiffs on 24 swings against those pitches, but his 4-seam is terrible. And if you can just sit and get that 4-seamer, you're going to be able to crush it. It's just a very small margin of error for a guy like Alan Winans. His location has to be on point, and he has to have some things go his way, and neither one of those things happened in this start. And then game 2 gets rained out. You got to make up on September 9th, and I got some questions about this as well. First of all, I know why, but you're going to have to travel after this game to New York, and you decide to play a day-night doubleheader, and maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe you don't have time to get that second game in anyway, but you play a split doubleheader, probably knowing, if you looked at the forecast, that you don't have a good chance of getting that night game in. Why not just play a straight up back-to-back doubleheader and see if you can get both of those games in? Now, you get the makeup on September 9th. The Braves had 2 off days that week, so it's not the worst thing in the world. So now you just have 1 off day that week. But that just didn't make sense to me in the first place. You know you're probably not going to get that second game in. Why not play a straight-up doubleheader? And if you knew you probably weren't going to get that second game in, why not start Chris Sale in the first game and try to get a win? I mean, if Chris Sale pitches that first game, they probably win that game. And maybe you feel a little bit better today. But right now, it's just another ugly loss. But they might rather have Chris Sale pitch in a big series in New York. I mean, that's what's going to happen now. He'll be pushed back to push the game on Thursday. So Chris Sale supposed to pitch on Tuesday, didn't. Supposed to pitch on Wednesday, didn't. Now he's going to pitch on Thursday. So hopefully he's geared up and ready to go, as he hasn't pitched in a while now. So hopefully, again, he'll be ready to go. Been over a week. He hadn't pitched since 2 Sundays ago, Chris Sale. So should have plenty of rest for this one. But again, just another frustrating, ugly, bad loss for the Atlanta Braves in this one, as they lose both games to the Reds. And look, it's a hard schedule coming out of the break. You're playing a lot of teams who are playing for something, but you're playing for something too. And you had your players meeting. Nothing seemed to really change. It was still bad baseball out there. Again, bad players out there is a huge part of the problem. But still, I would love to see a little bit more fight from this Atlanta Braves team. All right, next we'll take a trip around the league. We'll look at the standings, who's in, who's out as we gear up for the trade deadline, and then we'll talk about the latest rumors out there as we gear up for that trade deadline less than a week away. We'll do all of that here next. Get supplies from the site that's made for the skilled trade, SupplyHouse.com. SupplyHouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. If you need help with an order, get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business, and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Trade Master program. Every Trade Master gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at SupplyHouse.com/TM and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at SupplyHouse.com. You shouldn't have to worry when you buy tickets to your next big event. And Game Time takes all the worry out of that. Again, telling you about Game Time for a while. I don't need to look at the script here because I know I use Game Time. All the big events that I'm going to, all the Braves games that I'm going to. All you do, you download the Game Time app. Use our code LOCKEDONMLB. You're going to get $20 off your first purchase. But a couple of features I love about the Game Time app. You get a view from your seat right there. You're looking for the section you want to sit in. All you got to do, see it right there in the app. It'll show you what view it's going to look like. You're going to a Braves game in the summer. You want to make sure you sit on that first base side. Otherwise, you're going to get burnt out there. You also get all-in prices up front. When you see the price of that ticket, that's what I'm paying when I get to the checkout screen, and I really appreciate that. Also, with Game Time, you're getting the Game Time guarantee, which means you'll get the best price guaranteed. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets today with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONMLB. You're going to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day with the biggest stories from around the league. And you don't get all that yelling and nonsense that you hear on Fox Sports, ESPN. You just get the information you're looking for your favorite sports. You can find all that on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As far as what's coming up here for the rest of the week on Locked On Braves, we'll have our mailbag episode likely going to be during the day on Friday. At this point, if Grant can get his internet back, we'll have a postcast on Thursday night after that first game with the Mets. If not, then we will record on Thursday night. Otherwise, we'll have our mailbag episode on Friday. But let's take a trip around the league here. Looking at the standings, the Orioles are up 1 game on the Yankees in the AL East in what should be a really good battle down the stretch. The Guardians are up 5 on the Twins, 5.5 on the Royals. The Astros up 1 on the Mariners as they have overtaken them in the second half. Mariners are falling on pretty hard times. Yankees, Twins, and Royals have the AL wildcard spots with the Red Sox just a game and a half back, and the Mariners are next at 4 games back. And like I said, they are really sliding. Going to mention it in the news segment, but they've lost a couple of key pieces to injuries already for an offense that was already struggling. So you look at the American League, it's the Orioles, Guardians, Astros, Yankees, Twins, Royals, Red Sox. You got 7 contenders that I think if you're the Mariners, you got to really consider probably not selling, but I definitely don't think you're huge buyers at the deadline. You look at the National League, the Phillies are up 9 games on the NL East, and the Phillies have been losing lately, but so have the Braves. Brewers are up 6 in the NL Central. The Dodgers are up 8 in the AL or the NL West. So the National League divisions are pretty much wrapped up at this point. The Braves are up 2 on the Mets, Cardinals, and Padres in the NL wild card, and the Diamondbacks and the Pirates are both within a game. So you got several teams there that are fighting for a playoff spot, with the Phillies, Brewers, Dodgers pretty much already locked up. And then you got the Braves, Mets, Cardinals, Padres, Diamondbacks, and Pirates. So 9 teams in the National League that are still very much in the mix and should be looking to add at the trade deadline. I'm going to go through some offensive and pitching leaders here real quick, just giving you some of the bigger stat categories out there because I want to get into some of the trade deadline news. Judge leading all of baseball with a 1107 OPS, and his teammate Juan Soto right behind him at 1034. And you look at that Yankees lineup and you think it's the best in baseball. That's not the case. It's 2 guys that are having unbelievable seasons. You look at the rest of that Yankees lineup, it is really, really rough. Ohtani is 3rd in OPS at 1032, Bobby Witt at 981, and then Ozuna in there at 958. Home runs, Judge at 35, Ohtani at 30, Gunnar Henderson at 28, Ozuna at 28, and Anthony Santander at 27. Batting average leader, Stephen Kwan at 345, Bobby Witt Jr. at 343. And there's a big drop-off. And you got Ohtani at 314, Luis Arias at 311, and Juan Soto at 311. For the ERA leaders, you have Renato Lopez still at the top, even after a couple of rough starts at 2.12. That ERA finally over 2, but still leading all of Major League Baseball among qualified pitchers. Tarek Skubal at 2.34, Corbin Burns at 2.38. I think those 2 are going to be duking it out for the AL Cy Young winner. Seth Lugo at 2.38. I don't think many people saw that coming. And then Zach Wheeler at 2.55. Your whip leaders, Logan Gilbert at 0.86. That's just ridiculous. Tarek Skubal, 0.92. Tyler Glasnow, 0.94. Chris Sale, 0.95. And Jack Flaherty, 0.96. Your strikeout leaders, Dylan Cease, 159. Garrett Crochet, 157. Cole Reagans, 146. Skubal also at 146. Tyler Glasnow at 143. And then Chris Sale at 140. So you got some Braves. You got Ozuna up there on the offensive side. You got Lopez and Sale on the pitching side that are still up there among the leaders. But obviously on offense, you're not going to find anybody near the top of a leaderboard anytime soon behind Ozuna. Now, getting into some of the news and some of the trade rumors, first starting out with some news items. Comcast and Bally are nearing an agreement that we get the Braves and other teams back on TV for Comcast users. Red Sox are looking, or they did extend, it is official now, they extended manager Alex Cora for 3 years, $21.75 million. That's the second highest deal for a manager behind, Craig Counsell, name eluded me for a second, with the Cubs. I don't like Alex Cora. I'm sorry. I'm not a big fan of his. I'll just leave it at that. Josiah Gray having Tommy John surgery. Unfortunate news there for the Nationals. Now we get into one more news item. Kevin Kiermaier set to retire after 2024, which just kind of caught me off guard. I guess he has been around for a little while, but the reason it hits me, that was my first year working in minor league baseball. Kevin Kiermaier was playing for the Princeton Rays as a rookie, or just after just getting drafted, and now he's retiring, which is really aging me. When I saw that news, that really struck me because my first job working in minor league baseball, Kevin Kiermaier was a fresh rookie coming up. but he's going to retire after the season. Now getting into some of the trade deadline news and rumors. The Phillies interested in Lane Thomas, who we talked about yesterday for the Braves, and Kyle Finnegan from the Nationals. Yankees have interest in Jonathan India, who the Braves just saw with the Reds. Pirates willing to trade pitching for offense. That doesn't really help the Braves as they need offense. Mariners put J.P. Crawford and Julio Rodriguez on the injured list. Discussed that earlier. Their offense was already one of the worst in baseball. Now you lose those two guys. You just lost a big series to the Astros. They are certainly sliding. I would not be surprised if, I don't think they'll be sellers at the deadline, but again, at this point, I don't know that you can be buyers as the Mariners. You are just a game back of the division. So I definitely don't think they're going to be selling, but I'm interested to see what they do at the deadline because that offense needs a lot of help. And you just lost two guys that were batting in the top three in your lineup. Several teams showing interest in the Tigers' Mark Canha. I mentioned Canha as a potential outfield target for the Atlanta Braves. He's not one of my favorites, but he could be a fit for the Atlanta Braves. A lot of teams showing interest in the Rays' Isaac Paredes. That's not really a name that the Braves have much interest in. This tidbit here, though, is kind of interesting. Orioles willing to trade Ryan Mountcastle and Cedric Mullins. We've talked about Cedric Mullins. He has been declining. I don't think he is a great fit for the Atlanta Braves. Ryan Mountcastle, more of a first baseman, which some people on here may be thinking the Braves should go get Mountcastle to replace Matt Olson. That's not going to happen. I wanted to see really quickly, though. I thought he had outfield, I was going to say eligibility, but I feel like he's played outfield in the past, but I'm not sure on that. I'm sure the Braves really wouldn't want to make that switch. So he played left field in 2021. So that is a possibility, and maybe kind of an outside of the box idea if you wanted to hook up with the Orioles, who need some pitching. The Braves obviously, have some pitching, although they're needing that depth at the moment. That maybe there could be a trade there, but probably not going to happen. The Reds are looking to move bullpen pieces. Maybe the Braves go back and get Lucas Sims. What do you think about him coming to Atlanta? I think that would be an interesting move. But the Reds, as we just saw, have some pretty good bullpen pieces. The Dodgers interested in Randy Arozarena because, of course, they're going to go out and get the best guys at the trade deadline. Reed Detmers could be available from the Angels, which is interesting. It's been a weird year for Reed Detmers. Got off to a great start, then struggled, got sent down, has really good stuff, just has not been able to put it together. Braves have a very good pitching development staff. Obviously, maybe they could unlock Reed Detmers, so that might be a sneaky one to keep an eye on. Mets are looking to add at the deadline. As I just mentioned, they're now in a wild card spot, just two games back of the Braves for the top wild card spot, and they are playing really good baseball here lately, and they are now buyers, something I did not see coming at the beginning of the year. And then the Dodgers are also looking for an impact starter. Think Garrett Crochet, Jack Flaherty, Tarek Skubal, Justin Steele. Dodgers are going to go out, and they need impact starters, honestly. They're going to go out. They're going to get one of those guys I just mentioned, and they're probably going to get Randy Arozarena. If anybody gets Luis Robert, it's probably going to be the Dodgers. But do not be surprised if they go out there and get the best arm and the best bat on the market. And honestly, they need it, especially on the starting pitching side of things. If they're going to do anything in the postseason, they have to get another impact starter. So would not be surprised that the Dodgers make those deals happen. All right, next we will turn our attention to the Mets series, which again has suddenly become a big series for the Atlanta Braves, trying to hold off their rivals for the NL wildcard spot. And we'll get into that here next. This episode of Locked On Braves is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah. With summer travel heating up, especially travel for baseball games, it's time to explore those U.S. cities you always secretly wanted to learn more about. Yes, we're talking about your rivals' cities. With hotels, bed and breakfast, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more on Booking.com, you might just find your perfect stay, even in your baseball rivals' cities. The Braves are heading up to New York this weekend for a big series, as we talked about. You want to get up there to help support your team. Even as frustrated as you may be with them, you want to go up to New York, Mark City's field off your list. I've been there. It is a great stadium to go to. Outside of it is not too great. So make sure you look at Booking.com to find the right place for you as you go up there to watch your Braves play. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even the New York Mets. Book today on Booking.com on the site or in the Booking.com app. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. And unlike other apps on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. You're not playing against anybody else. You're just playing the numbers. And all you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000 with 4 correct picks on PrizePicks. And I've been saying this one for 3 days now, and I'm going to say it again. You're going to open up your PrizePicks app on Thursday now. You're going to go on MLB. You're going to see Chris Sale. They're going to have a stat projection out there for strikeouts, and you are going to hit the more button. Maybe not so much against the Mets lineup, but take the more, whatever it's going to be for Chris Sale. You're going to see that in your PrizePicks app on a Thursday, and hopefully Chris Sale gets to make this start. And PrizePicks is available in more than 30 states across the country, including Georgia and Alabama. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on PrizePicks for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy with PrizePicks. All right, before we get into the Mets series preview, we did have some news items on Wednesday. Had a lot going on because it was supposed to be a doubleheader, then it wasn't a doubleheader. After the game, the first game, the Braves optioned Alan Winans. No surprise there. They called up Zach Logue, which if you've been listening to Miners Monday, you've heard me talk about him. I've mentioned him almost every week this year. I mentioned him a lot. He's been really good at Gwinnett, both as a starter and as a reliever. So it made sense to bring him up to give you some depth in the bullpen, a guy that can get some innings for you. But after the game was rained out, then they optioned him. And they had to clear a spot on the 40-man roster to get him on there. They call him up, and then they option him, and they don't even play a game. I don't understand that. To make room on the 40-man roster, though, they transferred Michael Harris to the 60-day IL. Nothing major there. I think he's at 40 days now, so that just tells you he's probably not going to be back in the next week or two. But that's how they made room for him, made room for Zach Logue. But now they're an arm short on the active roster. They also called up Daysbel Hernandez as the 27th man for the doubleheader, sent him back to Gwinnett. That is not an option, so they could technically recall Daysbel Hernandez on the roster. But now that you've optioned Alan Winans, Dylan Dodd, Zach Lowe, you can't bring up any of those guys for the next 15 days unless there's an injury. And with the way things are going with the Braves this year, there probably will be an injury. But just kind of interesting. I kind of wanted to see Zach Lowe, what he could do. He's had a really good season at Gwinnett. Wouldn't be a big arm coming in to set up a game. But I think he could have brought you, what Grant Holmes has brought you so far. I see Doc's card saying Harris to the 60-day. Yeah, nothing major there. AJ Evans saying Michael Harris is too busy loving his Ford of Bronco. But he did do some drills on the field Wednesday. I know David O'Brien of The Athletic sent a video of him doing some drills there. So I think he's getting closer, but I haven't heard that he's running yet. And that is the last hurdle, obviously, for somebody with a hamstring before he can begin a rehab assignment. But that 60-day IL stint is backdated to where he originally started it for the 10-day IL, so it's nothing major there. He was going to be out for 60 days anyway, so go ahead and make that move to open up a 40-man spot. All right, now let's get into this Mets series preview, where I said the New York Mets have been playing really good baseball here as of late, and now they find themselves in the middle of a wild card pitcher. They beat the Yankees again on Wednesday, 12-3. That offense is just on fire. Francisco Lindor is on fire. An OPS over 1,000 in July with 7 home runs in the month already. And they took down Garrett Cole on Wednesday night. So you are getting a really hot Mets team that is playing really good baseball right now. Jeff McNeil has got it going. He has 5 home runs in the month of July and an OPS over 900. Mark Vientos has cooled off a little bit as of late, but he's given them a nice spark offensively. So you are catching the New York Mets at the absolute wrong time because they are playing really good baseball at the moment. Pitching, not so much. 21st in ERA in July. And the bats, they're top 10 in OPS, haven't exactly been lighting it up top to bottom, but they've gotten just good enough pitching, and the offense has been much improved. You look at the pitching matchups in this series, it'll now be Sale versus Luis Severino on Thursday. Charlie Morton versus Kodai Senga, who will be making his season debut. He's on about an 80 to 85 pitch limit in that one, so hopefully the Braves can knock him out early in his first start of the year. You got Schwellenbach versus to be determined on Saturday's matchup, and then Ronaldo Lopez versus David Peterson on Sunday. David Peterson's 5-0 this year, a 3.14 ERA in 9 starts, but a 1.48 whip and just 36 strikeouts in 48 2/3 innings. So some regression should be coming for David Peterson. Hopefully it comes on Sunday. But I like those pitching matchups for the Braves. But again, it comes down to the offense. What can they do? Can they do anything against this Mets team and help out this Braves pitching staff? But you're throwing the best arms you have available. You're throwing your top 4 starters that are available to you right now. And Sale, Lopez, Morton, and Schwellenbach. Those are your 4 best starters. You're throwing them in this series against a team that is right behind you, a division rival in that as well. So hopefully the Braves are able to get things going against this Mets team, who again has been playing really good baseball lately. They're 13-7 in the month of July. So the Braves will try to cool them off. You got the pitchers on the mound, the best that you can do on the mound pitching wise, the way you can match things up in this series just comes down to that offense. Can they get things going? And we have just not seen enough to believe that that is the case. That'll do it for this episode of Locked On Braves. Thank you so much for joining. We got Ricky Prob in here. Braves Thrills been here since the beginning. Lauro Bond, I've seen you in here just about every night. Thank you so much for joining. Docs Cards as well. David Agnesia, Trip Ray's in here as well. Thank you so much for the conversation. Little E, haven't seen you in a while. Welcome back. SoCal Brave, Mass Boost, mentioning Waldrop is rehabbing. I don't know if I've said that or not, but he is. He and Jimmy Herget started a rehab assignment in the FCL level. AJ Smith-Shawver and Ian Anderson are both close as well. We could see them join the pitching staff here pretty soon. AJ Evans in here, I mentioned earlier with the good joke that he had. But thank you all so much for joining. Thank you so much for the kind comments and the good discussion. But again, that'll do it for this episode of Locked On Braves. Subscribe on YouTube if you're new. Hit that thumbs up button. Follow us on social media at @shortstopball, at LockedOn_Braves. Make sure that you rate, review, and subscribe to the Locked On Braves podcast wherever you get your podcast. And we will talk to you next time.